Hello. So let us look at the first 16 questions from the review sheet. Now, here comes the first one. What is the x-coordinate of the point of an inflection? Point of an inflection, we talks about we have to get the second derivative. So let us try to get this one. What is the first derivative? Here we have 3 comes out, cancels out with 1/3, becomes x squared plus 10x. And then the last one becomes 0. Second derivative becomes simply 2x plus 10. Now you will realize that this one will be equal to 0 when x equals -5. Now, since this is a linear function, when x equals -5, before that will be, for example, if you had to plug in -6 here, it would have been negative. If you had to plug in a number greater than that, for example 0, then this would be positive. So you can see that the concavity change is about -5. So what is the x-coordinate of that happening? This one. Alright, the graph of the piecewise function given above, what is the value of... So now, in this case, the integral represents the area from -1 through 4. Then -1 through 4, let's try to look into this one. We can divide that into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sections. Here it becomes 1 by 2, so it becomes 2. 1 divided by 2, my bad, becomes area is 1. If I cut it this way, then 1 by 2 becomes area is 2. 1 by 2 divided by 2, since it's a triangle, the area is equal to 1. How about here? 1 by 1 divided by 2 becomes -0.5. Here 1 by 1 square becomes -1. So the area, combine the area all together because these two cancels out. So 3 minus 0.5, which is 2.5, becomes our final answer for the area, which is the geometric representation of the integral. Alright, how about this question? We need to integrate this one first. Now, if you have difficulty integrating this, you can consider this one as this way, x to the -2 power dx. Then what we can do is we can use the reverse power rule here. We end up getting x to the adding 1 becomes -1 over -1. Goes from 1 to the 2. In other words, this becomes -1 over x from 1 to the 2. If you have to plug in 2, we end up getting -1/2. Minus, if you plug in 1, we get -1. Then when you combine them together, we get +1/2, which is choice C. How about number 4? If f is continuous and differentiable, the fact that both of them is continuous differentiable, that means we are looking at continuous and smooth, which of the following could be false. Now, then if it's continuous and then differentiable, what does this mean? This means the mean value theorem. Is mean value theorem guaranteed? Yes, it is. Now, if f prime of c is equal to 0, does it have to be f prime of meaning does it have to be there a point where slope is equal to 0? In fact, could be false. This will be false because what if we have a function that is a linear? It's continuous and it's differentiable from these two particular points. But if in case of a linear function, we don't have to have slope of equal to 0. So therefore, that would be our answer. It could be false. Will there be a minimum value because it's enclosed? Yes, there will be some sort of lowest value as well as the highest value. And we can integrate this, of course. How about this one? What is antiderivative of sine? It will be negative cosine t from 0 through x. One of the common mistake is plugging x and then forget to plug in 0. But you always have to make sure you have to plug in 0 also. Then we end up getting negative cosine of x minus, when you plug in 0, we get negative cosine of 0. What is a cosine of 0? That's equal to 1. So therefore, this becomes 1 with a double negative. Our answer becomes 1 minus cosine of x, which is choice E. Here we have to find the derivative. So in this case, what we end up getting, we get 2x. By the product rule, we end up having x times y prime plus y times x prime, which is equal to 1, equals to 0. You see, make sure you get the derivative of 10 being equal to 0. When x equals 2, then we just have to plug in 2 in these locations. But what do you realize about y? Yes, let's try to find that. When you plug in 2 here, what do we get? 2 squared plus 2y must be equal to 10. Then since this is equal to 4, when you subtract 4 from each side, 2y must be equal to 6, where y becomes 3. Knowing that, we can plug in the values here. So we have 2 times 2 plus 2y prime plus 3 has to be equal to 0. Then you will realize that 2y prime must be equal to negative 7, where y becomes negative 7 y prime over 2. So negative 7 over 2 becomes our answer, which is choice A. How about this? Yes, since the numerator has multiple terms, or denominator has only one term, what we can do is we can separate this one in a way that x squared over x and minus 1 over x dx. Now x squared over x, simply it becomes x minus 1 over x dx. Let's try to integrate this one. This becomes x squared over 2 minus ln of x, which goes from 1 through e. And since the values are positive, it doesn't really matter whether we have absolute value or not. When you plug in e, we end up getting e squared over 2 minus ln of e minus, if you have to plug in 1, we get 1/2 minus ln of 1. Now, what is ln of 1? That's right, that's equal to 0. What is ln of e? That's right, that's equal to 1. So we have e squared over 2 minus 1 minus 1/2. That becomes e squared over 2 minus 3 over 2 power 3 over 2. So that becomes our answer, which is choice E. Number 8, f and g are to be differentiable. So g is positive here, and f of 0 is equal to 1. Now, in this case, using this one, we should be able to figure out the h prime. What is h prime here? By the product rule, we get to have h f of f of x times g prime of x plus, here we get f prime of x times g of x. But that has to be equal to this expression, which is f of x times g prime of x. Now, then you will realize that this one is in fact identical to this one, so by subtracting those two, we get to realize f prime of x times g of x must be equal to 0. Then what do you realize? Here, since g of x is equal to greater than, g of x is always positive, that means this will never be equal to 0. That means the only thing that's possible is this one must be equal to 0. So f prime of x must be equal to 0. While, that means this one has horizontal slope while f of 0 is equal to 1. That means it has to include this point 0, 1, and it's a horizontal line. Then f of x equals to 1, meaning y equals 1. That horizontal line becomes our equation. So choice E becomes our answer. Alright, let's look at number 9. The flow of the oil, and given in this way. Of the following, which best approximates the total number of the barrels of the oil passed through the pipeline on that day? Meaning we are looking at barrels per hour. This talks about the rate, and we are actually talking about the total number. That means from here to here, we are looking at integration. But integration of this function is best approximated by finding the area under this shape. So we get to realize that this was 6 times 100. So this box, each box seems to be about 600. How many boxes do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4. And then this is about half of the box. So another half of the box. So it seems like we have total 5 of those, which means approximately 3,000 will be our approximation here of the number of barrels. So therefore our answer must be 3,000. Number 10. What is the instantaneous rate of change? This talks about the f prime at when x equals 2, that means f prime of 2. So let us try to look into this one, how we can do this. Since we have a fraction here, f prime can be done by quotient rule, where x minus 1 squared. And then derivative of the top times the bottom one, which is the 2x times x minus 1, minus derivative of the bottom, which is equal to 1, times the top, which is x squared minus 2. Once you plug in 2 in place of x, what do we end up getting? We get 4 times 1 minus, here it becomes 2, because 2 squared becomes 2, all over 2 minus 1 becomes 1, squared becomes 1. So we have total, our final answer becomes 2. Number 11. If f is a linear function, the fact that it's a linear function, then f of x can be equal to ax plus b. Then what is f prime? F prime must be equal to a. What is f double prime? That's equal to 0. So then in this case, what we end up getting is 0. So a through b, 0 times dx. Anything multiplied by 0 will be equal to 0, so our final answer becomes this. Number 12. Limit. In order for limit to exist, what we have to realize is the left side has to be equal to the right side. Meaning, what is the limit of the function as x approaches 2 from the right side? That has to be equal to limit of the same function as x approaches 2 to the left, from the left. From the right, that means x has to be greater than 2. That means we are looking at this expression. So what is the limit? That means we just have to plug in 2. If it to be continuous, to see how the limit exists, then we end up getting, when you plug in 2, we get 4 ln of 2. Is that in fact equal to, when you look into limit as x approaches 2 from the smaller side, which means we are looking at the first one, we get ln of 2. Is 4 ln of 2 in fact equal to ln of 2? The answer is no. Therefore, slope or the limit doesn't exist. Number 13. The graph of the function, here shown above, has vertical tangent point at 2, 0, right over here, and horizontal tangents at 1, negative 1 right over here, and 3, 1. For what values of x from negative 2 to 4, f is not differentiable. The fact that f is not differentiable, that means we are looking at basically either vertical slope or slope doesn't exist due to discontinuity. One is right over here, another one is right over here. But notice that we're not including the endpoints. So negative 2 to 4. But between those two values, so we're looking at 0 and 2, becomes our final answer. Number 14. The particle moves along the x-axis so that the time position at time t is given by this way. For what value of t? It's velocity particle equals to velocity being equal to 0, that means we're looking at x prime of t. And here that must be equal to velocity of t. Taking the derivative, we get 2t minus 6 has to be equal to 0. Then obviously t will be equal to 3. Therefore, our final answer becomes 3. Here, let us try to look into this one. F prime of in this integral of this expression is in fact is equal to, or maybe I should put it this way first. F prime of x would have been equal to, simply substituting this value in place of t, so we have cube root of x cubed plus 1. So f prime of 2, that means square root of 2 cubed plus 1, which in fact becomes 3. And that becomes our final answer. Number 16. Let us try to find the derivative of this. What is the derivative of the outer layer? That's equal to sine. So we end up getting cosine of e to the negative x. Notice we're not going to take the derivative all at once. We're going to do it by layer by layer. Now, after the next inner layer becomes e to the negative x, what's the derivative of e to the negative x? That simply becomes negative e to the negative x. And then there is no more layers. So that becomes our final answer. It has to be negative. It has to have e to the negative x inside and outside, which means choice E becomes our final answer. All right, that's it for now, and I'll see you later. Bye-bye.